So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us at Applied's webinar series we're running. I'm with Siemens. My name is Steve Picard. I'm a regional network consultant for the Northeast. And we have Dave Burrell, who is our national IT/OT network consultant. And one of his jobs is to help educate people on OT security, which he'll discuss in detail. So we're going to take some breaks or some question and answer periods during. Dave will pop up a slide that allow you a time to ask questions during, and at the end we'll also accept some questions. And if you have any specific needs, you can always reach out to us. We'll leave our contact information. But thank you, Applied, for letting us run this webinar, and we look forward to hopefully meeting some of you. So. Without further ado, Dave, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Coming to you from central Pennsylvania. I'm David Burrell, the IT/OT network consultant. I think I know most of the people on here. But in any case, if you ever have any questions, comments, concerns about network architecture, cybersecurity, or things of that nature, anything on your networking side of things, either Steve or myself are available. And I can help out with network architectures, designs, and everything else, and help lead yourselves or your customers in a direction that is a more safe, secure, reliable design. So with that, if you have any questions throughout, I think we have a couple extra minutes overall, and we also have a couple of points laid out where if you have any questions, we'll stop and give you a couple minutes to ask those if there's anything that is you're unsure of, confused about, or just want some more clarification on. All right, with that said, always have to start off talking about the differences between the yesteryears and what's happening today. So for those that are unfamiliar, we start on the left-hand side, we move from the old Purdue model, going from, we'll say, our field level layer 0 all the way up to the enterprise level, which is a layer 5. And just how everything was laid out previously was usually so nice and neatly laid out that when we start introducing some of these IoT devices or more network connected devices or anything else, we know that the connectivity between the field level and control level up to that enterprise level is increasing year over year. And we have to have a good, solid core to be able to handle these communications. Otherwise, we're exposing ourselves, we're increasing our attack surface for hackers and outside people from external of your plant, or even increasing the amount of connectivity of locations from within plants for issues to happen even from your own employees. So one of the things that Siemens likes to really drive home is a different type of network architecture that not only brings into account redundancy types, redundancy media types and things of that nature, but also a different type of network structure to better interconnect the local field and control devices, bring it up to a core level, and then to the enterprise. And the better we lay out a system in this manner, the more reliable, the more safe and secure that we can design these types of systems. So as more devices get connected, as we start laying things out differently, we increase the overall number of connected devices. It's also creating a bigger ripple effect of the types of attacks that are going to be capable and in these more connected and more vulnerable states. I was reading something earlier today where cybersecurity budgets, for the most part, remain consistent year over year for most companies. So they have to start learning how to implement long-term plans to increase their overall protections. But one of the major things is year after year, the number of attacks increased drastically to the point that that budget year over year if you're not planning out correctly and taking full capacity of what you have available, you're going to be more exposed to standard off-the-shelf attacks. And just a quick reminder, if you guys aren't muted right now, I'd appreciate if you do that, so that way we don't have any feedback or anything else on the call. So there's a number of different commissions around the world, and Solarium is, if you haven't heard of it, Solarium is a US-based commission based solely for the cybersecurity realms. And really what Solarium is focused on is all types of cybersecurity for everything from manufacturing or anything within the US. And one of the major concerns that Solarium has is protecting the US businesses and capacity far above and beyond what people are expecting today. And basically pulling cybersecurity into the realm of if you don't increase your cybersecurity awareness and your policies and your planning, then you're leaving not only your company at risk, but also other companies and other sectors of the US enterprise as well. So we're not only protecting ourselves, but also at a higher level, those that are connected to us. When I say that as a kind of an just a thought, when I say that, when we start looking at some of the previous attacks that have happened, for example, the Target attack, if those of you that remember what 4 years ago, when Target exposed all the credit cards of customers that they've had coming in and out of there, their cybersecurity plan and policy and everything else was really safe and secure. But where the back door was actually one of their suppliers, someone who was coming in and doing the building automation at their facility. So again, we not only affect ourselves, but other companies around us. And moving on to one of the big things of Siemens, that Charter of Trust. I think some of the Applied people have heard me talk about this in the past, but so the Charter of Trust is a consortium of different companies that have all come together under the basic umbrella of cybersecurity being the number one or one of the major priorities in any product, network design, or anything else that we put out there. And the importance of this is not only showing the measures that Siemens itself is trying to go at cybersecurity, but it's also looking at some of these other companies that are out there. If any of you have ever heard me talk and you hear Cisco come out of my mouth, it's usually not because I love Cisco. I think they have some great products and things of that nature, but you also know that Cisco is one of my major competitors that I run into on a daily basis. So the importance of coming into a charter that also has our major competitors in it is showing the value and the extent that Siemens as a company is willing to go to make sure that our products are safe and secure and our network architectures that we put out there are safe and secure for yours and your companies and everything of that nature. But what the Charter of Trust really tries to cover is it's a broad scope. It's a big paintbrush just across everything, but there's a couple of different key things that are throughout here. I already talked about the joint initiatives, even with our competitors, and the value that shows that we're willing to go. But when we start looking at some of these bits and pieces, we see that security by default, that is one of the top design things that you will see me talk about when I'm putting out any type of network architecture for a client. Security is one of the top things that is put into every single thing, from the product development cycle all the way through the final architecture. So one of the major differences, and I've already alluded to this, is that confidentiality is one of the top design considerations that we put into a network architecture, as well as a product development cycle all the way from the ground up. For those of you that have been in cybersecurity or have been in networking before, if you're on the network or the IT side, you hear a lot of the time CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. On our side of the fence, the OT side, we're looking at the reliability of that network first and foremost. Time is money, and there's only so much time in a day. So making sure that that system is up, reliable, and ready to go is one of our top priorities. And cybersecurity typically falls in a little bit behind that. But if we put together a good network architecture, we can really balance out the availability, the integrity, and the confidentiality of that system. So when we start looking at the overall network designs and things of that nature, we start to look at a number of different things. It's not only the communication, it's the access, who has access to those devices, the integrity, and also the identification of who is logged in at what time. So this is kind of the basis of a network architecture, network system, a policy plan, and everything else. When we start looking at the identification, we start to consider things like the authentication of devices and users who are connecting into that system. We don't just leave open ports for anyone to come in, either locally or remotely. We want to know who is logged in, who is connected, what they're doing, so that way if something happens, we can go back and see who is connected and make sure that they're the right people that are connected, and also that those right people that are connected have had the right trainings and everything else that need to happen. So cybersecurity in the industrial, the OT space differs slightly as a result of what the effects on a plant or a system can be. In many cases, there's loss of intellectual property. There's the issue of potential safety. Someone gets into a machine, a robot, they take control of that robot, they can see what's going on, if there's cameras on there, and they can make large swings or changes or issues in a production that may put someone's life in harm's way. Could be sabotage and any other of these things that are listed out. I won't go through all of them. But when we look at the differences in the OT space versus IT, IT is typically focused on security of personal data. In many cases, it might be, the employees that they have, the tax information that they have, financial information. But when it comes to the OT space, it's really about moving machines, which can put people in harm's way. So whenever I talk about security and cybersecurity, there's also other parts of cybersecurity that come into play. Not only is it the network security and protecting the network and a good network design, it also comes into place who has access and when, the overall facility access. Are there locks on cabinets? Can anyone just walk up and use a screwdriver to open up one of the cabinets that then has access to the rest of the plant? A good cybersecurity policy takes into account multiple different levels, from not only the plant security, network security, but also the system integrity of the overall system. So that said, there is a process that goes into place whenever we talk about cyber-related things. Number one, first and foremost, is always assess your security. Assess the devices that are out there on the plant today. I think anyone that's heard me give this speech before, I'm sure that you've heard me talk about, I consider myself an athlete, and I always have. I always set plans and goals for what I want to do in a month, in 6 months, and in a year, the things that I want to accomplish, the races, whatever else that I'm going to do. And I have to know and understand where I'm at today to have the realistic goals and expectations to the things I want to do in the years to come. If I'm just getting started and running, I'm not going to sign up for an Ironman and then kill myself in a month. It's just not possible. So knowing where I'm at today and what I can do in a realistic time frame with the money that I have available, the time I have available, and everything else. It's the same thing here. We have to know what's on the network, because if we don't know what's on the network, we can't protect it. Then we roll out the implementation, which the implementation phase is usually where someone might collect a PO for the products and places and the things that are going to get put out onto the plant floor. There are assessments that are capable by Siemens or other companies out there where, obviously the POs and everything's can roll in. But when we start looking at product sales and things of that nature, that's typically where that takes place, is in the implementation phase. Then the management phase is usually the actual policies that were rolled out by a customer on site, the patch management systems that they have, the monitoring of the traffic and the data to make sure that if an attack or anything happened, that they respond in appropriate measures. So when we start looking at creating a plan, there's 4 key factors that roll into this. Again, knowing what's on your network is always number 1. You can't protect what you don't know is out there. Then update, patch, or replace. One of the major things and one of the major issues that most customers don't realize or don't take into account, I think one of the biggest joke questions that I'll ask a customer is, when was the last time that you updated the firmware on your network switches or any of the other devices in your plant? Most end customers will probably laugh at me when I ask that question. Their response will usually be, well, when was it installed? That's unacceptable. In any case, the firmware that gets pushed out from manufacturers, whether it's Siemens, whether it's Cisco, whether it's Rockwell, whatever else, there are patches that help protect their facilities on a much greater scale than what I think many people really understand what's actually being offered up. It's free tools to increase your cybersecurity of your plant. Then we create a cybersecurity program. This can be a bit of a daunting task. There's a lot of documentation and paperwork that takes place, but there are things that help you create and implement a plan that then you can work the plan and make sure that people know and understand and recognize what's happening in their facilities. So when I say that there are facilities or there are tools to help you, there are a lot of free online knowledge dumps that you can get. There are consultants such as myself that can come out and help train, educate, and make sure that you're more experienced and aware of the other tools and the things that are available and some of the typical processes and steps and measures that can be put into place at a facility. Then there's also standards, frameworks, and maturity models. They can be kind of confusing until you start to understand the differences in the standards, frameworks, and maturity models. There's a lot of standards in place today, and what they mean to an end customer, whether it's a standard or a framework, a lot of people just kind of jumble those together when they have 2 separate areas of importance. So first and foremost, the standards. One of the more common ones is the IEC 62443. That is a global standard that's in place that many people, especially manufacturing locations, take advantage of. Then there's also the NIST 800-82 standard as well. That standard typically is used in any critical infrastructure type place or anything that has any government regulation in the US. That could be power generation, power distribution, could be water, wastewater. I know that pharmaceutical is now starting to get rolled up into this as well. And there's one other industry I just forgot. Food and beverage is now starting to really rely on the NIST 800s framework because of any type of government regulation. This is what they're going to rely on. Also ITAR, if you've ever heard of ITAR, any customer that has to comply with ITAR standards and regulations, they will be required to utilize the NIST 800 standard in their facilities. And again, Siemens can help you with that. Then there's the frameworks and then the maturity models. Unless you're a large customer, the maturity models and frameworks are really overlooked for a lot of companies, places, and people. And to learn more about these specific things, there are training certifications and the consultants that can help you learn and identify where these fit in more applicable across the overall industry. So Siemens offers a couple of certified professional industrial networks. I know that Applied Controls has a couple of these, a couple of their gentlemen that have the certifications from Siemens, but there's also other locations that if you ask me and you give an overview of what you're trying to accomplish and learn, I may recommend a Siemens, I may recommend somebody else. For example, right now I'm even taking some of the the SANS certification trainings right now. I've taken a number of the ISAs in the past, and then there's also the ICS certs. So coming from someone who has been through a lot of these trainings, I can help direct you into what may be the most valid for yourself or your customers. So to give a general overview of what a standard looks like, so the ISA 99 or the IEC 62443 is very common around the globe. And a lot of companies tend to use this because it is very well laid out and gives a basic general understanding of cybersecurity for different environments. As an example, some of the customers, even that Applied has and will see, are going to be very familiar with hearing IEC 62443. And the reason is there's a lot of military consortiums and groups around the area that utilize 62443. In many cases, they're looking at the -4. So I'm going to start from the bottom here. So IEC 62443-4 is all focused on the development and the life cycle maturity models and everything else for product development. So when, let's say, for example, military wants to buy a product that has IEC 62443 on those products, what they're going to look for is improvements. They're going to look for stamps or certifications from somebody that has the ability to audit Siemens based on the IEC 62443-4 framework. And what that does is any computer that touches any type of product development, the board development, so the PCB board that goes in there, any software pieces and components that go into the overall development, where they come from, where we purchase products from, where we sell them to, anything else of that nature, that guarantees, in essence, that an end customer of Siemens or Applied is going to have a product that when they get it is not going to have some type of malware, ransomware, or anything else. One of the bodies that, or actually there's two bodies that Siemens uses for our certifications for the -4, and that is first and foremost is Achilles. I'm sure that you've probably seen the Achilles stamp on either our networking components or our PLCs or drives or anything else. Then there's also TÜV, so TUV, and that is a German-based group that does auditing based on the 62443 framework. Then if you're confused about what some of those concepts, models, or anything else is, we're going to jump up to the top where it says general, and that'll give you the glossary and kind of the basic understanding of the terms and everything else. Then when you get to the -2s, so the policies and procedures, many customers can actually take the policies and procedures from here for all the -2s, pull it out, and apply it directly in their plant. So this might be let's say a free framework for a company to deploy a policy at their facility without having to bring in an outside contractor. They just have to be able to understand the terminology that's going into it. And then lastly, where I tend to spend a lot of my time is in the system, so the -3. So that's actually the system architectures, the designs, and things of that nature. So this is how a typical standard is broken out. And even your NIST frameworks or your ISO 27000 is laid out fairly similar to this. So they all kind of have the basic frameworks, and each one of those bodies has people that are trained on how to implement and deploy an overall system that meets and matches the overall outline documentation. So like I said, short break for any questions. Are there any out there? You can unmute at this time.
I don't know if Mary can hear us, but if she can unmute it for a second.
All right.
You know what?
Maybe they muted themselves so they can't.
Yeah, I think they did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you have any questions, just go ahead and unmute yourself. If not, we'll keep going.
All right. I'm going to take silence as a play to move forward. So network security, there's a couple of different components within a network architecture design that can be deployed to help protect people and their network architecture as a whole. So a lot of times people will ask the question of, I want a DMZ. And many of the times what people are asking for is they need a firewall. And in that firewall, they need to have enough ports that they can pull out a DMZ zone, because a lot of IT policies and stuff will directly call out that it's required to have a DMZ. I actually had a phone call with a customer last week that they called up Siemens and they're like, hey, I need a DMZ product. What does Siemens have to answer that for me? And I was like, well, let's educate on what a firewall is and how a DMZ is deployed. So in most cases, a DMZ zone, what gets placed in any DMZ zone is any SCADA system, any server, or anything that does not need to be accessed by internal of the plant to run, but it can report its data up into those servers, the asset management systems, or anything else of that nature. And then the insecure zone above that is typically where you will see the uplink into an IT, so that way the managers, the C-level people can actually see the actual data reporting, but they don't have access down to the plant floor. They don't need access to the plant floor, they only have access into the DMZ zone. Another place where DMZs are very commonly used is, let's say you go into Starbucks. Well, if you're allowed. Right now, I guess we're not. You go into Starbucks and you join on to their network, and now you're connected to the internet. Well, technically, you're not connected directly to an insecure zone. They actually have you brought into a DMZ within their facility. Behind, on their secure side, they have rules and things that ensure that you can't gain access into their secure zone. But their secure zone, they're reporting, let's say, temperature levels of the water, the number of pounds of coffee grounds that they have, or anything else. Most of their machines at a facility are all connected in a secure zone, so that way headquarters, I guess Seattle or Oregon or wherever they're located at, can get direct reports out of all the different locations. That's one measure of how a DMZ is used. Actually, I have several DMZs at my house because, you know, what a network guy doesn't. Oh, that's a shame. So next up is remote access. I know that right now people are talking a lot about remote access. I'll say that our Cinema RC software sales have probably spiked here in the past couple of weeks with everyone being locked at home. So remote access, what are the policies and procedures in place? Many times your remote access server will be placed in a DMZ. Just an example. Next up is the actual cell segmentation and protection. A lot of cases, people might use some basic stuff such as VLANs. They might also lay out firewalls more at the machine level. And For example, one of those firewalls that they could use would be the SCALANCE S series product that they could put at a machine level to do either remote access directly to protect machine 1 from machine 2. So if somebody comes in and plugs in a USB drive that takes down one machine, it's not taking down the rest of their plant. And then secure redundancy. I know that we talk a lot about redundancy and the safety measures and everything else, but redundancy in a network is also considered part of your overall cybersecurity portfolio and planning. Because if one of these devices becomes, or one of the machines in your cells or whatever else get an unidentified person in there, typically one of the first and foremost things that a policy calls out is power down your uplink connection. And if you don't have redundancy, you power down one connection and you lost your entire plant instead of just that one location. So by putting out redundant measures, you allow yourself to take down a segment of your plant while protecting the other segments, keeping those up and running and everything else. So having a redundant plan in place, or a redundant architecture in place, is a cybersecurity recommendation. So we look at a standard layout. This is what Siemens out of the gate would recommend. So you have your IT core, that you have your firewalls, and in your firewalls you might have a DMZ zone or whatever else. Then we have a strategic backbone that we put throughout the plant. Everything then below that, when you look at the old Purdue models, would be your layers 0, 1, and 2. Your management level here would be more considered your level 3, and then your IT gets into your 4 and 5. So again, we always like to segment out our IT from our OT, because IT has different policies that they have in place. They might roll out patch updates for your computers or anything else, and if those patches get onto the plant floor, you could take down a machine. You could take down an entire area of your plant or the entire plant. I know of at least one Applied customer that had a patch rollout from IT that took down a major section of their plant. It is a very common thing and typically overlooked, but it is something that if you take into account, you can reduce your overall downtime due to your network, due to proper network segmentation. Then we also always call out the network management, some type of network management software. Again, you can't protect what you don't know. And then the cell protection, so the final devices that get put down closer to the machine and device level. So when we look at an overall plant, we see the different areas, the machine lines or whatever else. A lot of times when I come in, the first thing that I'll do is I'll ask, what are the different cell levels? What are the different areas of this facility that we have marked out? So that way we can start protecting them as we have created a plan for. So for example, let's say that we have 4 cells within this plant. When we start looking at what actually goes down on the plant floor, we say that we're going to look at cell 1. Cell 1 is a segmented VLAN, so only cell 1 has access to that VLAN up to that firewall. Then the firewall can route that data, so that way your cell 1 information can be reported up to the NES or NES system or SCADA system. So that can be done with a basic network layer 2 switch. Then we also have other devices like a CT card or an SC module that allows you to do firewall type devices. It might be a VPN tunnel to that layer. And there's also additional protections in these that you might be able to do a layer 3 type routing firewalls or things of that nature. Then we start looking at the actual products. So you all know that there are 2 product portfolios that Siemens offers. There is the RUGGEDCOM portfolio and there is the SCALANCE portfolio. If I am involved in a design, I might pull from either or to meet and exceed the expectations of a customer from their specifications for their overall system. That might be hazardous locations, it might be temperature, it might be IP ratings, if it needs to be mounted inside or outside. I can pull from either one of these, and so can you. So there's two different types of devices that we have. So we have our layer 2 and our layer 3. Our layer 2 devices, again, is the standard off-the-shelf networking equipment. And in most cases, some of these layer 2 devices have one or two little layer 3 things built into them to make things or designs overall a little bit easier, that we can deploy things at a lower level. Then we have our layer 3 stuff, which anyone that's familiar with layer 3, that's typically used for your routing capabilities in a network. And both the XM400s or the XR500s have the routing capabilities. One is a DIN mount, one is a rack mount, so we can put these anywhere throughout a facility. And next up, we have our security appliances. On the RUGGEDCOM side, we have a device called the APE, or the Application Processing Engine. And on this APE, this is basically a mini PC. So on this mini PC, we can put on, let's say Siemens doesn't have a software or an application that a customer needs, like a next-gen firewall that we just don't have, or they want an IDS or an intrusion detection system or an intrusion prevention system that ties into a firewall. We can install that on this device and have it delivered to a customer with whatever their specified people are. And the companies that are listed here are partners that Siemens has that we can sell as a part number directly embedded on some of our products. Then we also have our security appliances, the SCALANCE S. So any of you that have seen these before, you might have heard them talked about as a VPN device, where you can VPN tunnel directly into one of these devices to connect to what's behind it. There are also firewall devices or layer 3 devices, depending on how you deploy it, or it can be a combination of any of the above. One of the things I always like to point out time and time again is, if you're looking at a firewall, always look for a stateful packet inspection firewall. It is the what and the how. It is looking at the actual data that's coming through to ensure that the data is the right data that's coming through. So just make sure you're always looking for a stateful packet inspection firewall. The other thing that all of our SCALANCE S devices are capable of is NATing. There's a lot of times that I'll get a network architecture drawing, and someone will have a SCALANCE S device, and then right behind it they'll have a little box that they're using for NATing for a machine line. You can develop or design it directly into the SCALANCE S device at the plant. Then when we talk about cybersecurity, we always talk about who has access and when. So this is one of those devices that can actually go in and lock out a port that you need a key to access the port. So you can do it in the software, or you can do it directly with a physical device and a key device. And lastly, we talk about software. So anyone that is interested in Cinema RC, that is our remote connect type devices. Our remote connect type devices would be the SCALANCE S on one side. So what this will allow you to do is, Cinema RC is a rendezvous server that manages the connection points between an SRC client that might be installed directly on your computer down to either a cell modem or the SCALANCE S-600 devices as well. It is an AES 256-bit. You can use OpenVPN or IPsec. IPsec is typically used in the IT world, but OpenVPN is usually a more secure type connection. The reason IT uses IPsec over OpenVPN is IPsec is more focused for the IPv6. It's the IP address scheme moving forward, but since we're on the operation side, IPv4 is above and beyond probably what most of us will ever see in our professional days. So we tend to use the VPN connections. The next up is our SINEC NMS. This is the software platform for managing and monitoring the network. So when I say that you have to know what's on your network to protect your network, this might be a software tool that we would recommend for an end customer to deploy. So what it is it will reach out and connect to all the different devices. It'll string together an entire architecture of what's in place today. It'll give you a graphical representation. It'll document anything and everything that happens on the network. It will report this data or it'll pull the data via SNMP or Profinet. And there's some other semantic mechanisms. So the Profinet and the semantic, obviously that's probably more directed towards Siemens networking components, but the SNMP can be any device that's out there that you have access to the MIB for. So that could be a Cisco device, it could be any of our other competitors. Everyone tends to have SNMP built into their managed switches, so we can manage and monitor all those devices. This device or this software also allows you to do firmware management, policy rollouts. I can do firewall rules directly from here that deploy out to the different firewalls within a facility. So it's kind of your central management for your overall network at a facility. And next up, there's also our professional services. To get a quote for anything else on professional services, you can reach out to either Steve Picard or myself. And some of the stuff that we have access and capabilities for are not only the assessments of the overall network to determine what you have in place, but also we can do security assessments directed more towards the NIST or the IEC specifications. We can help with design and consultation if it's a design that goes above and beyond the time and the abilities that I can put into a design for free. We have a group that can help out with the overall architecture and planning of the overall system. We can also help with RF planning. We can do the integration and deployment of these devices. We can do custom trainings for any customers who want to learn more about either general networking. We can do security, cybersecurity. We can do wireless. We can do a number of different things directed towards what your customers or what you as an end customer need. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out. And kind of closing the gap, coming back into that original process that we talked about for cybersecurity, the assessments, the management, and the implementation. Again, remember that assessing is figuring out what's on the network, evaluate your present situation, move to the implementation side where you're starting to deploy some of those devices, design and implement those technical security measures that are out in place. And then the management is continuous updates, making sure that the policies that were created in the previous sections are actually being used. You might even have a recovery plan that companies might test and try out and make sure that they know the processes, so that way if something does get hacked or an issue does happen on their network, that they know how to handle it in those specific cases. So practice. So when we look at what Siemens can help you with, so first off, we can do the actual mock audits for NIST or NERC. We have the capabilities of looking at an overall assessment based on IEC 62443, ISO 27000, or the NIST 800. We can also help. There's a group within Siemens that does patch management. We can do industrial vulnerability management and things of that nature. But also remember that in the implementation side, we have trainings that we can do that are either free with Applied Controls. We can come on site and do those at end customers as well. We have the products to help design and architect and do all of those types of things. And then we also have those services to help design, implement, and deploy the overall systems. So just as a quick reminder, Zero trust cybersecurity should always be treated similar to safety programs. It's a way of life. So it's something that has to be reminded day in and day out. So you don't create a cybersecurity plan that says once a year we come back and take a look at it. That's not a plan. I don't know what that is, to be honest with you. And Siemens has a wide range of networking and security products that can be deployed and help protect your networks. We can help with training, planning, and deployment of the overall systems. And don't hesitate to reach out. I know cybersecurity can be a daunting task. And if you were to ask me 10 years ago if I could come up with a cybersecurity plan, I would say that you were crazy for even asking. But now, being on the other side of this, it is not a daunting task. It's very easy. It's just working the overall plan. So please feel free to reach out and use us as a trusted advisor to help you out with that. So with that said, this is mine and Steve's contact information. Are there any questions that you all have?
So while you're thinking of your questions, we have a couple other things going on. In a few weeks with Applied, we'll be doing another webinar on our Cinema RC, which is our Cinema Remote Connect. So we're actually going to set up a VPN tunnel live and connect it to a PLC over the through our server on the net, on the internet. So we'll actually show you in a couple minutes how to set something up with our security appliance and with our cellular modems. So if you're interested in that, just stay tuned to Applied and reach out to your Applied salespeople. And also, if you're interested in doing more hands-on on some of our security appliances, we do have a defense and depth workshop that we run occasionally. So if you are interested, let your Applied salespeople know, and we could probably set something up once the coronavirus works its way out, and we can do something nearer to you. So if there's any other questions, please go ahead and ask. We also had this seminar a few weeks ago, and we had a customer that said, hey, I really need to take a look at my security. And so Dave and I met on a live meeting with them and met with their IT manager and their engineering manager and just kind of went through what they had. And we're signing an NDA right now with them and moving forward to give them some advice. So if you're interested in that, just taking a first step might just be a phone call with us. So we look forward to that as well.